You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. And welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line right now is a gentleman who at one time I called to do a wellness check on, to make sure he was still alive, because there was a report that the Equalizer had died, and everybody assumed it was him.
I forgot about that, brother. I did. I remember that now.
Yep, I'm glad he's still here. And, of course, I'm talking about, you might know him best as Evad, Dave Sullivan, the Equalizer. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
It's such a pleasure to have you on, and it's a pleasure to have you on because we have a reason to have you on, and that is your book's out. You wrote a book. It's called Meet Dave Sullivan, and I guess my first question is, what made you decide this was the right time to put pen to paper and write the book?
Well, my football coach, Sandy Buddha, he wrote one too called The Riverboat Gambler, and we were out having, I think, alumni thing for the Mavericks, and he mentioned, you should do it. You really should, about your life and everything. It's good for your family. It's just a, good thing to do. So we ended up doing it, and it was fun to do.
Very cool. And you use the cover art on the book. It does have a screenshot of you from WCW there. Obviously, football is a huge part of your life as well. Was it hard to decide which picture to use for that front picture?
We kind of did a couple, three, and that's why we put the football one on the back with me and my brother and my dad. So, it was kind of put the wrestling on front and then put the football one on the back just because of being more famous for wrestling than football.
Very good. And I hope I'm saying his name right. Jim Fay is the co-author. Jim Fay, okay. He's your co-author. Did he do a suitable job for you?
Yes, he did. He goes way back because he knew us all when we were in college and stuff, and he was assistant SID up there at UNO. So we've known him for quite a while, and families have known each other. His son even coached for me, coached a cross country team when I was the AD at Dana College and head football coach there.
Awesome. So I guess my question would be, what do you think of the fact that wrestling from the 90s, 80s, 90s has such nostalgia right now that there is a market for the book and there is people who are definitely wanting to hear your story?
Honestly, because I think it's so much show now, and that a lot of people miss those days when it was wrestling and a little more tighter and all that stuff like that. It wasn't all the flying around. It was actually grappling and fighting and everything like that. And I think a lot of people miss that. And I think there's a nostalgia for that reason because of what they see now on TV. And then, of course, the thing that happened with Vince here lately is not going to help it either.
That's true.
I mean, and it's going to get, with the feds involved, it's going to be worse.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's,
we've all heard the rumors through time and history. And back then they were just rumors, but now they're going to be investigated.
Yep. It's going to be very interesting to see how every wrestling promotion, but especially WWE, who has seemingly tried to scrub him from history, which is hard to do when that is his history.
I mean, it was before he got it going. It was, it was all territories. I mean, Rod worked in one, I worked in a few. I mean, Vince was growing at that time when we started, but he wasn't what he is today. And he killed all the other territories. Now you either got the independent circuits or you got WWE, you got the AWE hanging on. And this could benefit them, honestly, because, I mean, WWE right now is a family organization. I think that's why the powers to be are trying to back out of him so bad, is because that's their market. And this is not good if you're a family organization.
Very cool. Yeah, this is not. It's and it's difficult because I interview a lot of guys that obviously were around Vince, and you don't know how to ask them because you don't know what their relationship was, and you don't know how close they are to the situation. You might get your nose bitten off if you get too close to the fire. So,
I know.
Yeah,
I understand. But I mean, that's why I think they're trying to really scrub him, not bring it up. But it's with him being the main guy for so long, that's going to be difficult to do.
Very cool. I told you on Messenger, I listened to our old interview, and I also watched some of the other interviews that you've done over the years. And one of them one of the questions that popped into my head while hearing about your football career is that you were a part of the Steelers organization back when the great Terry Bradshaw, who I still have a plaque on my wall behind me here, was still part of the team. I mean, are you around like Jack Lambert and all that great Steel Curtain era Steelers?
All those guys, other than all those guys that I was around during the 82,
Mhm.
Are all in the Hall of Fame now. And what amazing group of men. I mean, from Chuck Noll, he was a great coach. He never said much. He just was always a teacher because, he's a very cerebral guy. And, he always taught and coached that way. He never really, very seldom yelled at you. He was always, I think he yelled at Terry more than anybody else, but he was always teaching and trying to get you better because, he was a lawyer. He got his law degree. So he's a very intelligent man. And then you had Jack Lambert, who was the toughest sucker around toughest man you ever met for 218 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Webster, probably the greatest center that ever played. Franco Harris,
Franco Harris, yes, sir.
Rocky Blyer just retired. He was doing the sports for he was a sports anchor for one of the local Pittsburgh stations. And then you had Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Donnie Shell, Jack Ham was still there. He was near the end of his career. All those great ones. And then you look at it now, they're all in the Hall of Fame and they're considered some of the greatest. And Mel Blount, they changed the whole rules of what you could do as a quarterback because of him and Michael Haynes, because they were so physical. Guys couldn't get off the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge football fan. You probably could tell in some of these names you're there. You got my mouth salivating here being in a room with these guys. That's amazing. So I've asked Rod Price, and we'll mention him a little bit later, but I must have asked him this 100 times because often he has, back pain and things like that. And I always ask him, what hurt him worse, his time in football or his time in the wrestling ring? I'll ask you that same question. What has done more, physical damage to you, the time on the gridiron or the time in the squared circle?
Squared circle, not even close.
Really?
Yeah. Just because of, and Rod's done the same thing. You do 2 shows a day. You you're on the road over 300 nights out of the year. And it's just, and you're doing all the, that's the thing about when you're wrestling, you're the guy doing the bumps and everything. You don't get to bring in a stunt double. And so, the constant doing it that much, it was hard on your body. My back and knees and shoulders all hurt because of that today. I know. And I think football a little bit, but there's no question wrestling was harder because I did it longer. And it was just so many days a week. And Rod was the same way. He was in Japan, was real tight too. So it was, that's we worked hard, and I think that's why I know Rod played football and was a great football player too. But I think that both of us probably felt it more in wrestling, just because you did it all so much.
Absolutely.
Because you always got a week to recover in football. You don't get a week to recover in wrestling.
That's true. All right, so you worked a lot of different places, not just WCW. That might be obviously where people remember you most just because of the reach that it had with TBS and TNT later on. But you worked Portland Wrestling, and Portland Wrestling had the reputation of being the tough guy territory. And that was definitely the case. There was a lot of big guys, Scott Norton, Billy Jack Haynes, yourself. Len Denton, the grappler himself as well, was a big part of being a tough guy in Portland Wrestling.
Don't forget Crush, too, because he was there, too, and he's a big old boy.
Crush Brian Adams?
Yes.
Oh,
Brian
wow.
Was there too. He was part of the wrecking crew too with me and Grappler.
That's true. There you go. So what did you think of Portland Wrestling, and how did that compare to all the other territories that you would work later on? Was it a different mindset or a different approach to the matches?
Honestly, it was kind of because Don Owens ran it for all those years. It was really a family-run organization. Him and his son ran it, and then Sandy, I can't remember the referee's name, but
Sandy Barr?
Sandy Barr, and they all kind of worked together. But they were really cool guys. It was a physical territory because there was a lot of big guys. There was only a few small guys, but all good-sized men and wrestlers in the ring there. But it was a lot of good attitudes. It was because it was just in Portland, Oregon and Washington. You didn't have a lot of overnight, so you'd always drive back. And so we'd always get together afterwards and have a few drinks and talk and everything like that. So it was kind of a close-knit territory where like the AWA and those, they're spread out of so many different states. Before WWE comes, the AWA was the largest territory. They were in Denver, in San Francisco, Omaha. They had a lot of major networks.
Yep.
A lot of major TV going on. Because that's what I grew up on was AWA here in Omaha.
Yeah, in fact, they stretched all the way down to Vegas and even into where I am, which is Phoenix. They stretched all over.
They were strong, buddy, in the day. Because look who he stole from first. He stole from the AWA. He got Jesse. Andre was already with his dad, but then he got Hulk, and then he got Mean Gene, and he stole a lot of talent right from that and then just kind of drove AWA in the ground.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Japan. You mentioned Japanese wrestling and being there with Rod Price, and I know you wrestled Scott Norton in Japan as well. That style of wrestling has reached a new level of popularity in the United States. In the past, it was just tape traders, but now there's like wrestling fans who are just Japanese wrestling fans, and they live in this country, in the United States. What do you think of the popularity of Japanese wrestling in the United States growing so much as it has?
Again, they work, they do some flying around, but they still get in there and it looks like you're in a fight. You know what I'm saying? I remember when Harley Race first got with me and taught me before I went to up there's Grappler, he always said, make it look as real to a fight as you can without killing each other. You know, that was and he talked like this. He'd have a cigarette in his hand. He always had Harley was a double tough sucker too. He always had a cigarette in his mouth. He'd call you kid. He goes, now kid, listen. And ever since he taught me that, I watch some of these matches. There's no way you're going to do that stuff in a fight. Otherwise, you're going to die because I'm going to move. I'm not going to stay there and catch you.
That's right. That's what a lot of people say when I watch wrestling with people that aren't necessarily wrestling fans. They're like, so why is he just standing there while the guy's doing, 3 jumps before he jumps at the guy? And I'm like, I can't answer that. I don't know what the answer to that question is. So,
yeah, I like the great Muta. He probably did as good as a job as I have ever seen to do that acrobatic stuff, but make it look part of a fight.
Yes.
Where it looks so snug and real that it was believable to the people, And I think that's what Japan is about, and I think people want to get back to that here in America, too. I think they're talking because when you watch a WWE show, it's more walking and talking than it is wrestling sometimes. And I think people like to see the action. And I think that's why it's growing. I really do. That's one thing I can come up with, and I'm not the smartest guy, but that's one thing I can come up with.
Absolutely. I started out young and very naive, so I wouldn't make phone calls to guys like Harley Race, like out of the blue, and call him and ask him if he wanted to do an interview. And I was so impressed that so many of them said yes. So somebody like Harley Race I've interviewed before, and it's just amazing when I look back at, the quality of man of that era is just heads above any other era that I've ever been lucky enough to speak to.
The egos today are terrible. And back then, like you said, Harley was double tough. Nobody messed with Harley. I mean, he slammed the Giant way before Hulk ever did.
Yep.
And then he slammed him on a concrete floor too. And Ric Flair's told that story. Ric Flair was in shock, and he came back to the locker room. He goes, Harley. He goes, did Andre agree to that? He put a cigarette in his mouth. He goes, kid, I called it, and Andre did it.
I love it. There's a popular movie out there right now. It's called The Iron Claw, and of course that all circulates all around the famous Sportatorium. We already mentioned Rod Price, who was there when you were there. You weren't there very long, but you worked the Sportatorium in the Global Wrestling Federation.
Yep.
How did you enjoy being Captain Ron and working Global?
I enjoyed it. I think Dallas was a good territory. And Akbar was our booker at that time, and he was a good guy. And then you had James Beard, who was the referee. And matter of fact, I'm having a tough time with names tonight, but that's my fault. The tag team was there, too, that went to the WCW with me.
Harlem Heat, Booker T and Stevie Ray.
Harlem Heat, they were all there. I mean, so it was a good group, too. And I enjoyed all those guys. I mean, Rod was my favorite, but James was wonderful. I mean, and I enjoyed the brother tag team, and I mean, I enjoyed all those guys. They were just great. And then, got to really know all the guys and worked in different spots with them. So I enjoyed it. Dallas was a fun and good. And again, I think it was very similar. There was a little more traveling because it was Texas, but it was still a good family territory, kind of like Oregon. It's a good attitude with everybody and all that. I didn't have any problems with anybody. I enjoyed my time down there with everybody.
Very good. And where did the name Captain Ron come from?
We were on a boat. This is true. Over there, going to an island to wrestle, and James and Rod came up with it. You ought to come down to Texas. We'll talk to Akbar, and you got to do Captain Ron. Put a patch over your eye and all that shit. And so we just kind of messed with it, and sure enough, I was down there doing it. And I enjoyed it. It was really James. It was James and Rod's idea, honestly.
Rod told me before the interview. He said it was because he was on a plane coming back, and the in-flight movie was the Kurt Russell movie, which is Captain
Right.
Ron. And he said he couldn't remember your name at first, so he said, let's call him Captain Ron.
Yeah, he did. That's part of it too. But we really didn't come up with the whole idea till we were on it. We were all traveling on a ship there in Japan, going to a show, and it was near the islands of China, kind of back then, and so it was interesting. But we wrestled at this island, and then we took it. Then we flew. We took a ship there because they just kind of wanted to do that with us, and then we flew back. But yeah, we kind of really put that idea together then too. But we started calling me Captain Ron on the damn. Yeah, we watched the movie on the way over from Japan. It's a true story.
Awesome. So I had Tyrus on about a year and a half ago, and I kind of got the reputation of doing these these sad interviews where the guy breaks down a little bit, and he started to tear up when talking about the next guy I want to ask you about, and that is the great Dusty Rhodes, who was the booker when you went to WCW. Do you have any stories about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes?
Oh, just that he was really, because how that all happened, I was down in Puerto Rico at that time, and I was rooming with Dick Murdoch. And you remember him and Dick Murdoch were a tag team together way back in Omaha and stuff like that and around. They were good friends. They're both from Texas. And then Dick recommended me. Then Harley brought me into WCW. I mean not Harley, but Dusty did. And Dusty, I enjoyed Dick. I was down there in Puerto Rico with him. So Dusty's a great guy. The thing about Dusty was, the kid that what's his son that's now the star?
Cody, yeah. Cody Rhodes.
Okay. Cody was a kid at that time. We both had a son the same grade, the same age. Mine was Aaron, okay? And they were wrestle on the same kids team. So Dusty and I and Dustin is the brother that was, Gold
Dust, yep.
Gold Dust. We go watch the kids wrestle and kids wrestling. And Rusty and I tell stories. And he loved football, so we hit it off right away because, and Murdoch and everything. And Dusty was always funny. His guy would have been a great reverend. His talk was unbelievable. He could get the crowd going in heartbeat the way he could just preach to him. He's like a preacher. And it was kind of his nickname. But I love Dusty. He's a sweetheart, and I love his whole family. They're great people. They were always good to me and my family, and very nice. And it's amazing to watch the kid now. He's the face right now in the world,
Yep.
like his dad was. And I remember watching him as a little kid, and he was a good little grappler.
There you go. There was a wealth of talent in WCW when you got there. There was Rick Rude. There was, as you mentioned, Dustin Rhodes. There was a lot of great talent that had come in. And it seems to kind of be forgotten that before Hulk got there, and by the way, I'm a big Hulk fan, so I'm not by any means bashing Hulk. You could do that if you want, but I won't be. But before Hulk got there was a heck of a lot of talent, and things were really quality wrestling at that stage in WCW in 93, 94.
I agree. It was a great group. They all worked hard. We traveled together and stuff. So, and they brought me in like a family because I think a lot of it, Dusty, that's what Dusty wanted, and Jody Hamilton and all those guys. So it was I really enjoyed it, with Dusty and those guys. And you're right, because I worked with Rick, I worked with Paul Orndorff, and they were all great talents. And I worked with Dustin, Sting, and all of them were marvelous to work with. And of course, Ric Flair and all of them. Rick's the night off. It's great people to be. It was. I didn't question the talent at all. It just didn't have the name of Hulk Hogan, but the talent was very strong. I agree totally with you.
So about 20 years ago, I interviewed Ric Flair, and at the time, people were kind of upset about another character that was a little similar to yours, which was Eugene. He kind of played like maybe a little slow character, and he kind of pointed at that. He said there was Norman the Lunatic, there was Evad Sullivan or Dave Sullivan. He kind of mentioned you in passing in that interview. Did you enjoy, though, playing that maybe more of a slow type character and the Hulkamaniac character? Is there any ego involved in that of not wanting to play that kind of character?
Well, Kevin kind of honestly, truly, Kevin came up with the idea of doing that. And Kevin's pretty sharp on all that stuff. So I figured, was it would I enjoy it like other characters? No, I didn't. But it was fun doing that and being with all the stars and all that, and having that type of ego and opportunity. But I did it because I could pull it off. But it wasn't no. I much rather be a barbarian and an equalizer than And I enjoyed just being Dave Sullivan and Evad when we were both criminals and we wrestled the Nasty Boys all over the world and everything like that. I enjoyed that because we all wrestled the same style. It was a fight every night, which is fine with me. But they were great to work with and all that. So I mean, the other thing was just I could do it, but it wasn't as fun.
Yeah, I understand. And I mean, you got to be in Clash of Champions. You got a team with Hulk. I mean, you really had some huge moments as that character. But it's kind of funny that what was probably, and it is the picture of the book, what was probably the biggest run you had isn't your favorite, though. That's kind of an odd catch-22.
It's not, I mean, just, it was, I'd much rather be a heel. That's the bottom. And then a baby face or a villain, and I'd rather be a villain than a blue eye. That's what they call it overseas. But I mean, that was more fun than being a baby face. That's probably the thing is, being a face brought me a lot more and made me more famous, but it wasn't as fun because, I'm a nice guy naturally. I get along with pretty much everybody because I enjoy people. I think that's important. And I've always been humble because that's when my mom and dad brought me up. But it was more fun to play the other guy when you're doing the other stuff.
To get to tell somebody in the crowd to shut up and
yeah, not sign autographs if you don't feel like it. Babyface, you got to sign them everywhere. When you're a heel, I ain't signing your autograph. Fuck off. They get you working. So Dave Finley, who was a great worker. I don't know if you ever interviewed him, but he's a great worker.
I wasn't lucky enough to. Not yet.
But anyway, I hope you do. But he's a good guy, and I was with him one time. We're over in Germany. And fan brought up a thing, his picture, and autograph. He just dropped the fin and dropped the book and walked off. But you can do that as a heel. You cannot do that as a face, But that's the nice thing about it. You can do that. And I like that alter ego part sometimes. It was fun to play that.
Very cool. This is kind of an off-the-cuff question, and if it's stupid, that's fine. We could just move on to the next one. But I felt that the theme song they gave you in that era, which was a song off of Hulk Hogan's CD that he had put out, it was called "I Want to Be a Hulkamaniac." I thought that kind of detracted from you. I thought it was kind of a little bit too weak and not like fitting.
Yeah. That was Jimmy Hart's thing, and I mean, it wasn't. I thought it was a little bit too kiddish, if I said the word, but you know what I'm saying? Some kid would come out to more than a grown man, even if I was a little backwards.
That's true.
I agree with you, man.
So Mick Foley often says when he got thrown off a cage, he got himself thrown off the top of a cage, almost killed himself, and then he painted a face on a sock, and he was more over from painting a face on a sock than he ever was taking crazy bumps. Were you surprised that people still ask you about Ralph the Rabbit?
Yeah, they do. You're right. That rabbit's famous. I mean, do you still got him? That's 20 years. No, those rabbits don't live that long.
I don't know how long they do live. That's a good question.
No, but yeah, they still remember, and I know that's what I'm saying. You're right, because Nick. I mean, we were in Germany, and he took one of those crazy bumps, and his ear went flying in the air, and we're like going, "Oh, this ain't good." Because we're in another country. We got him in, he got sewed back on. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. That sock, he got more over with that sock than he ever did doing all that stuff.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that I was going to interview I was going to listen to one of our old interviews before we did this, and you kind of, and forgive me if I'm not trying to, I'm not a gotcha guy, so if this is like a question you don't want to talk about, that's fine. But at the time, you seemed like you were like not thrilled with your matches with DDP. You almost sounded like you were maybe not even happy with DDP himself at the time. I mean,
and I know DDP's a good guy. He just can be overbearing. But I still love him. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody promotes himself more or better than DDP does. And I mean, our matches were fine. I mean, we had good matches because we practiced them for a while. So I mean, at the down there with at the what the hell was it called? Yeah. So I mean, we weren't going to mess up because we practiced them. There was hardly anything not called in the ring. So I mean, but we still had good matches, and I know he does. He's done a lot for help people, so he's a good-hearted guy. He can be over. Yeah, sometimes it's just too much.
I can totally see that.
I still love him, and I still like him, but yeah, after a while, it's like okay. I'll go to the other room.
I love it. So you left well before WCW closed, but you've said in prior interviews that you kind of could see the writing on the wall that things were going to crumble. What did you see happening that was kind of the writing on the wall?
Just, I think, too much, and everybody turning heel being NWO. It just got. I mean, I think what they have. Sting was the only babyface left.
Well, more or less, yeah. Maybe DDP, but that might have been it.
Yeah, Sting and DDP. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, so if they kill everybody, who are you going to work against?
That's true.
And I mean, but they were there for a while. I don't know how it happened, but there for a while, they were more popular than WWE. I mean, Vince was on the back pedal. You know, we were kicking butt and winning. And I don't know if that's what changed. Too much heels and not enough baby faces to fight them, or what happened. But all of a sudden, the ratings, then Vince started winning, and before you know it, they sold it.
What do you think about? Sorry, again.
What's that?
I was going to say, you mentioned Sting. What do you think about his pending retirement? He's going to be calling it a career in just a few weeks.
Yeah, it's just showing we're getting freaking old. You know, I mean, because Steve's a great guy. I mean, he's originally from Omaha, and you know, his family's from here. He's still got family here, so he's still, even though he grew up in California most of his life, he's still got that Midwestern attitude because his folks were from Omaha, and he's a great guy. Steve Borden's a great guy. Love him to death, and he's a good human being. You can sit in a room, talk to him all night. He'd talk to you about anything. Just a good guy. And I mean, yeah, when you see Flair have his last match, you realize we're getting old, and you see Sting having his last one, you're like going, well, it's just we're getting old. Time passes us by. But you can't outdo Father Time, my friend.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I checked out Cage Match, which is a website where you can basically look at everybody's career, like they have a list, like a database. And I see, okay, you didn't wrestle for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, but it says you had some matches last year. What made you decide to get back in the ring after all this time?
I work with the MWA here in the local territory, and Brian Blade's a good friend of mine, and him and Donnie Dodge kind of talked me into start doing some of this stuff. I'm still in good shape, and I still work out, so I said, why not? So I do a little bit of part-time because I still enjoy I'm a heel now again, which I enjoy. And it's just good being around it again, the people. I mean, and you know what? And what Brian does is more what you see, what you kind of grew up with, the WCW and you know, Portland. I mean, it's more wrestling than it is talking. Which I think that's why they show up, these fans, is because they want something different. I
agree. When you left WCW and you went back to the independent scene, what made you kind of decide, you know what, I'm going to go into a different line of work and end up, as you know, we kind of buried the lead earlier, but you ended up a football coach again. What made you decide that wrestling was time to step away from the ring at that time?
Well, I got remarried. And, you know, I just thought, you know, my body was starting to feel a little bit. So I just said, you know what? And I was coaching football before I got into this. And so I had an opportunity to get back into college coaching there in 2001, here up here in Dana as the offensive coordinator and teach again. So I said, it's time. So we moved up here, and we been here, you know, been up here and all that stuff for a while now.
That's amazing. Well, and
that's what I just thought. This is just because I was before, and I thought, well, maybe this is better line of work right now, and all that stuff.
Very cool. And we're kind of rounding the corner towards home base here, or that's actually a baseball reference instead of football for a change. But we're heading home here, so I'll talk a little bit about the book again. Going into the book and writing the book, was there any topics that you think that maybe the fans that grew up watching on TV are going to be surprised to find out about you in this book?
Just about how the process and everything, what it took to be a professional wrestler and what you had to do, and how you went from football to being a professional wrestler and all that stuff, and a little bit about my background, my family, and all how I worked hard and all that stuff. And it's more of a story about, you know, how hard I had to work to get to where I was, because I wasn't athletic gifted as a lot of people. So I always worked hard in the weight room. I'd take my car and was a those big old LTDs back in the day, and I'd let it roll all the way down the hill, and I'd push it all the way to the top because I got that IFDF from Dick Buck because that's how he trained his legs.
Oh my
I'd do that, and I lifted. So I mean, a lot of that's just on my story how I got there. Then I decided to be a professional wrestler. I talked to Harley Race, so I started doing that, and how hard I had to work. So it was kind of my, it was kind of a story about never give up. Never give up on your dreams because you never know if you do. If you at least try and get through it, you can see where you end up. And if it doesn't work, so what? At least you tried.
That's awesome. And where can people pick up the book?
It's on Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com and go and look for Meet Dave Sullivan, and it'll pop up, and you guys can order it.
That sounds great, man. Well, I want to thank you for doing this with me. Like I said, it's I think it was about 15 years ago that the reports came out that you had spread or shed your mortal coil. So thankfully that wasn't the case. And
I'm shocked when you called me and told me, man, I'm stuck. I pinched myself. I'm still here.
Well, what it comes down to is it's one of these, internet wrestling reporters who, a guy who wrestled as the Equalizer passed away. Well, that must mean it's him. And they didn't do their research. And it didn't sound right to me. That's why I wanted to make it right and talk to you. And I'm glad to reconnect with you so many years later.
Well, let's stay in touch. You're a wonderful man, and I appreciate this opportunity to share my story with you and the book and everything. So let's keep it up because Rod's one of my favorite people, too.
Absolutely. All right, man. I've taken up enough of your time for one evening, but I'll let you know when I get this up online. I'll post it up in MP3 and up on YouTube and Facebook, and I'll tag you in all the good stuff.
Awesome. I really appreciate it.
This is Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, for us.
Featuring the interactive interview.
Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Formerly The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze rock.
Yo, Maniacs, so what you gonna do when the Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
On WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And now we shamelessly name drop from our history.
The Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
All right, everybody. Viva la raza. Viva la raza.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, ladies.
Hey guys, we had a lovely conversation.
First lady.
Absolutely. Oh, look at me. She's so kooky.
Be there. Where else?
Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling.
Epicenter.
Oh my God, you win! Love being interactive.
I was not shooting. Yeah, I almost missed my fan. Breaking neck. I got 2 words for you. I've heard a lot about you guys. I see my language getting over the shot. I see them now. Into the many.
No nerves.
That was great. It's going to be cool. What it's all about. The purest point of view. The living legend. Rock and roll champion. Arrogant.
Jesus makes me.
Instead of statement, I'm talking to you.
So lonely without you.
In the land of extreme.
Testify. Nevermore. Interactive interview. I'm not just the best. Interactive interview with a plastic
You
head.
earned the right.
Nobody. You better keep listening. Thank you very much. Controversy creates cash. Professional
Made
wrestling.
in the USA, baby.
Memphis wrestling. The guy on fire.
I'm not
bad.
We were sexy.
What a show.
One and only.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive interview. We took care of the business. This isn't ballet. We are huge with this whole. You're where it's at. You better recognize who's the best. Make sure to tune in each and every week. I'll come out of your computer and knock down your door and turn it on for you. Or else I'm going to kick your stinking teeth in. And that's the bottom line.
Have a nice day.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.